says money is simple: earn, spend, save. But what if prosperity was never about money at all? Here we uncover the contradictions that shape how we think, act, and feel about wealth. Welcome to the Prosperity Paradox podcast, where every story challenges what you believe about success. You've probably wondered why, even after life gets better, even when the paychecks grow larger and the fridge stays full, there's still a quiet voice inside whispering, "Be careful, don't waste it, it could all disappear." This story begins with that voice, the one that doesn't trust peace, the one that never believes it's truly safe. A man stands in his kitchen at midnight. He has everything he once prayed for: a house, stability, a sense of control. Yet he's staring at the open refrigerator, feeling something strange, a hunger that food can't fix. He's not poor, not anymore, but his body doesn't know that. He runs his fingers along the cold edge of the counter and tries to calm the unease that always arrives when the world gets quiet. His mind starts its nightly ritual, calculating, checking, planning, scanning for danger that no longer exists. He tells himself it's just being responsible. But beneath that word hides something older fear. The strange thing about money is you can escape poverty and still carry it inside you. You can buy safety, but never feel safe. You can fill every shelf and still wake up thinking you'll run out. Scarcity doesn't live in your wallet. It lives in your nervous system. He remembers the house he grew up in, thin walls, arguments muffled through closed doors, a mother stretching every dollar until it broke, a father coming home late, smelling like worry. He learned early that money meant tension, not freedom. That happiness could collapse with a single unexpected bill. As a child, he watched his parents count coins at the kitchen table. He heard the phrase, "we can't afford that," so many times it became a lullaby. He didn't understand numbers, but he understood fear. And fear, once it finds a home, doesn't move out easily. Years passed. He studied hard, worked harder. He promised himself that one day he'd never feel that way again. He would earn enough to silence the fear forever. And he did, but the fear didn't disappear. It just changed its clothes. Now it looked like discipline. Now it called itself ambition. He checked his bank account daily. He refused small pleasures because they weren't necessary. He said no to vacations, to time off, to anything that didn't move him forward. He told himself he was being smart, but in truth he was still trying to protect that frightened child inside, the one who had seen how quickly safety could vanish. Scarcity is clever like that. It hides behind logic. It speaks the language of responsibility. It convinces you that tension is virtue, that relaxation is risk. It tells you, keep going, don't stop, don't trust it. And you listen because deep down your body remembers when stopping meant danger. He thought money would buy peace. Instead, it brought silence, just enough to hear the fear louder. Every time he spent, guilt arrived. Every time he relaxed, anxiety knocked. Every time he felt joy, something whispered, "Don't get used to this." He thought he was managing money, but really, money was managing him. Scarcity is not a lack of resources, it's a lack of safety. And when safety becomes a memory instead of a reality, you begin to live as though disaster is always one step behind you. He's not alone. Millions live this way, earning, saving, accumulating, yet never arriving. Their lives become fortresses built to defend a fear that no longer exists. But what are they defending, really? Their money, or the memory of once having none. When you grow up in scarcity, you don't just fear losing money, you fear losing control, losing worth, losing love, because somewhere deep inside, Your mind linked them all together. And so even when you have enough, you behave like you don't. You hoard, you overwork, you say no to things that would make you happy because happiness feels fragile, too expensive to risk. He used to think freedom meant never worrying about bills again. Now he realizes freedom is being able to feel safe even when you spend, even when you rest, even when you stop running. But he's not there yet. He still wakes up some mornings counting imaginary threats. He still scrolls through his accounts, refreshing numbers like they're breathing for him. He still feels the ghost of not enough standing behind him, whispering old warnings in a new world. He knows it's irrational. But the body doesn't speak reason, it speaks memory. And memory, once shaped by fear, becomes identity. He is the man who made it and still feels like he hasn't. Scarcity has many faces: the entrepreneur who can't stop working, the saver who can't spend, the achiever who can't rest, the wealthy who still feel poor. It isn't greed, it's protection. You're not guarding your money, you're guarding your past self. And until you see that, you'll keep feeding the ghost that was meant to die long ago. You can upgrade your life. But until you upgrade the story you tell yourself about what enough means, you'll always be living in yesterday's fear. You've escaped poverty, but poverty hasn't escaped you. He didn't know it then, but the lessons that would shape his adult fears were already being written quietly, invisibly, in the background of his childhood. Not by teachers, not by books, but by the tension in the room every time money was mentioned. He was 7 when he first learned that silence could mean danger. It was the silence that followed his mother's sigh as she opened the electricity bill. The silence between his parents' words when numbers didn't add up. The silence after the sentence. "We'll figure it out." That silence felt heavier than shouting, because even as a child, he could sense what it really meant. We might not. His parents never meant to teach him fear. They were just surviving, doing what generations before them had done, stretching, sacrificing, enduring. But children don't see sacrifice as love, they see it as instability. And instability, repeated often enough, becomes identity. He grew up believing money was a living thing, unpredictable, moody, capable of disappearing overnight. Sometimes it was there, and life felt safe. Sometimes it vanished, and the whole house changed temperature. He learned to read the emotional weather like a survival skill. The way his father set his jaw at dinner, the tone in his mother's voice, the bags under their eyes after a long week. He didn't know what scarcity was. He could feel it like static in the air. When his friends asked for new toys, he learned to smile and say, "I don't need it." When the class went on a field trip he couldn't afford, he pretended he didn't want to go. That's how the programming began, rewriting desire into denial. He wasn't avoiding pain, he was avoiding the shame of wanting too much. The human brain is a brilliant machine. It learns fast when survival is at stake. Each small disappointment reinforced the same hidden rule. There's never enough. Don't ask for more. Stay small. Stay safe. And so the scarcity program was installed, line by line, moment by moment. He didn't choose it. It was given to him like a hand-me-down coat that never quite fits, but keeps you warm enough to live. As he got older, the program evolved. It learned to speak adult language. Now it said things like, "Be responsible," and "save for the future." Words that sound wise, but when rooted in fear, become chains dressed as logic. He thought he was being smart when he refused to spend on himself. He thought he was being mature when he turned down joy for security. But really, he was still that little boy watching his parents worry, trying to control what he once couldn't. There's a strange thing about growing up in scarcity. You don't just inherit your parents' financial situation, you inherit their nervous system. You learn their fears by osmosis. You breathe them in like second-hand smoke. You might leave the old neighborhood, change your job, build a new life, but the fear travels light. It fits easily in a pocket, and it always finds its way into the next chapter. He didn't notice how deep it ran until success came. You'd think money would delete the old programming, but it did the opposite. It made it louder, because now there was something to lose. And loss to a mind trained in scarcity is the ultimate nightmare. He started overworking, not because he loved his job, but because resting felt like tempting fate. He started saving obsessively, not for goals, but for protection from invisible threats. He said no to generosity, no to comfort, no to calm. He mistook control for safety, and control never satisfied. He was still running the same survival code, only on a more powerful computer. And here lies the paradox. Scarcity doesn't disappear when you make more money. It simply upgrades its disguise. It becomes productivity. It becomes perfectionism. It becomes the inability to stop even when you've already arrived. The scarcity program doesn't care how much you have. It only asks one question: what if it's not enough? And no matter what number you feed it, the answer never changes. He used to envy people who seemed relaxed about money, people who could spend without guilt, who could enjoy what they earned. He thought they were reckless. Now he sees they were free, because freedom isn't found in having more. It's found in unlearning the fear of having less. Looking back, he can trace every adult decision to one simple pattern: a childhood fear disguised as maturity. Every achievement, every long night, every just-in-case plan, all echoes of that old house where silence meant danger. That's how powerful the programming is. It doesn't need logic to survive, only repetition. It keeps you loyal to the past, even when the past no longer deserves your loyalty. He realizes something now. He never truly wanted wealth. He wanted safety. He wanted to stop worrying, to stop waiting for the floor to collapse. He wanted to trust that peace could last. But you can't program safety into a mind that still believes the world is dangerous. You have to rewrite the code. And that begins not with money, but with memory. To understand the ghost, you have to return to the house it was born in. Success arrived quietly. No fireworks, no sudden joy, just a steady climb, the kind that looks impressive from the outside but feels strangely flat from within. He moved into a bigger apartment, then a house. He bought a better car, a better watch, better furniture. He told himself these were symbols of stability. But sometimes when he stood in the middle of it all, it felt like living inside a performance. A carefully built museum exhibit titled "The Life of a Man Who Made It." Friends congratulated him. His parents were proud. Yet when the noise faded, when he sat alone at night, scrolling through online banking apps, the same pulse of unease returned, small, familiar, unkillable. The numbers had changed, the feeling had not. That's the cruel irony of success for those who grew up in scarcity. Do you think you're chasing safety? But what you're really chasing is relief from a fear that no amount of money can touch. He thought reaching his goals would silence that old voice whispering, "Be careful." Instead, it learned new words. Now it said, "Don't mess this up. Don't fall behind. You've worked too hard to lose it now." Scarcity doesn't vanish when you reach abundance. It simply changes its costume from fear of not having enough to fear of losing what you have. And the more he gained, the louder that fear became. He started comparing. Not because he wanted more, but because more had become the only proof he was safe. He compared his salary to colleagues, his car to neighbors, his vacations to strangers online. Every comparison was another small wound. Every success was immediately followed by a new benchmark. He was no longer poor, but he was still living in survival mode. One night, he looked around his living room, polished, spacious, silent, and realized how similar it felt to that childhood kitchen. Different setting, same atmosphere. The tension hadn't left, it had evolved. Now it was luxury anxiety, a fear wrapped in comfort, a panic hidden beneath achievement. He had upgraded his environment, but not his experience of safety. He had more things, but fewer moments that felt alive. And that's the paradox no one tells you about wealth. When you finally have what you once dreamed of, you discover it never had the power you imagined. It can buy space, but not peace. It can buy comfort, but not freedom. It can buy quiet, but not silence, because the real noise is internal. He noticed how often people around him were running the same loop, different lives, same anxiety. The friend who made millions but checked the stock market every hour. The woman who couldn't stop working, afraid of being replaceable. The entrepreneur who called burnout discipline. They were all fluent in the same hidden language, fear disguised as ambition. Society celebrates this fear. We call it hustle, drive, success. We praise the exhaustion as evidence of purpose, but deep down, most of it is scarcity, in disguise a desperate attempt to out-earn the memory of never feeling safe. He began to see the illusion everywhere. Luxury marketed as peace. Status sold as security. The myth that abundance can be bought if you work hard enough, that comfort will finally quiet the mind. But comfort, he realized, doesn't silence fear. It only gives it softer furniture to sit on. He remembered how his father once said, "When we have enough, we'll finally rest." But there was never enough. The definition kept moving like a mirage that disappears when you get closer. Now he was living that same mirage in high resolution. The truth hit him one quiet Sunday morning. He woke up early, no meetings, no deadlines. The house was calm. He could finally relax, and yet he couldn't. His chest was tight. His thoughts racing toward the next task, the next plan, the next defense against nothing. That was when he understood. He wasn't working for freedom anymore. He was working for permission to feel safe, to rest, to exist without guilt. And that permission never came. Scarcity had evolved into something sophisticated. It no longer said, "You don't have enough." It said, "You aren't enough." Because when you grow up measuring worth in survival, you can't easily measure it in peace. He started questioning everything. Why did he buy things he didn't need? Why did compliments make him uncomfortable? Why did success feel like temporary oxygen, something that would run out if he didn't keep moving? He saw how fear and desire worked together like a cruel economy. Fear created the hunger, desire promised the cure, but both depended on the same illusion. That happiness was always one achievement away. He thought back to that child who hid his wants to avoid disappointment. That child had grown up, but the habit stayed. Now he hid his peace for the same reason. And for the first time he realized how backward it all was. Maybe the real scarcity wasn't in money. Maybe it was in stillness, in the ability to sit inside abundance and actually feel it. He laughed quietly because the irony was painful. He had spent years building safety only to discover that safety was a feeling, not a condition. You can fill a room with comfort, but if your mind still expects the floor to collapse, it will never feel like home. He had mistaken abundance for accumulation. He had mistaken progress for peace. He had mistaken illusion for safety. And the illusion was perfect because it kept him running. He used to think fear was personal, something inside him, born from childhood. But the more he looked around, the more he realized it wasn't just his fear, it was everyone's. And worse, it was profitable. Fear had become the most successful business model on earth. It didn't sell terror, it sold relief. 1,000 products promising to quiet the same silent panic, the fear of being left behind, of not doing enough, of not being enough. You can see it everywhere in the glow of late-night screens, in the endless scrolling through lives shinier than yours, in the quiet race you never agreed to run. We don't buy things to own them anymore. We buy them to feel safe for 5 minutes, to feel one step ahead of the hunger that never stops. And that's the cruel genius of the fear economy. It never sells you the cure, only the next distraction from the symptom. He began to notice how every ad, every slogan, every upgrade whispered the same message his childhood once did: you're not enough yet. The difference was now it came in high definition, with better lighting and faster shipping. Every part of modern life seemed designed to keep the scarcity program running, the news that feeds uncertainty, the markets that thrive on volatility, the social media algorithms that keep you comparing your backstage to everyone else's highlight reel. Fear became currency, attention became capital. And people like him became both the workers and the consumers of their own anxiety. He thought about how he used to wake up early to get ahead. Ahead of what, he wasn't sure. Ahead of whom, he didn't know. But the fear of falling behind was enough to keep him moving endlessly, pointlessly, efficiently. Scarcity had evolved beyond survival. It had become culture. A culture that measures worth by output and rest as laziness. A culture that applauds exhaustion and calls it excellence. We live inside an invisible marketplace where peace is overpriced and anxiety is free with every purchase. He started seeing the absurdity of it all. How a society obsessed with abundance still feels perpetually deprived. How people earn more than ever before but sleep less, smile less, breathe less. How comfort no longer comforts, because comfort was never the goal. The goal was always more. He thought of the irony. The more we chase control, the more controlled we become. The more we try to secure the future, the less we live in the present. The more we accumulate, the emptier we feel. Fear has a way of disguising itself as productivity. It makes you feel useful while it quietly empties you. It convinces you that urgency is purpose, that movement is progress, that if you just keep going, eventually the anxiety will stop. But it doesn't. It grows, because the system isn't built for peace, it's built for repetition. Your fear keeps it alive. He realized this one morning while driving to work. The highway was full, every car rushing forward like an army of ants. Everyone moving fast, but no one knowing why. He saw faces in other cars, the same tight jaws, the same distracted eyes, everyone listening to their own version of the same whisper. Don't slow down. He wondered what would happen if everyone stopped at once, if the world collectively decided we already have enough. Would the economy collapse, or would something else finally begin? Because maybe that's the real paradox. The world's survival depends on your belief that you're not safe. If you stop fearing, you stop buying. If you stop comparing, you stop needing. If you stop running, the treadmill stops too. He thought about his own life, all the hours traded for security, all the years lived as though fear was a virtue. He realized he hadn't been protecting his money. He had been protecting the system that taught him to be afraid. That's how deep the programming runs, makes you your own warden, defending the very walls that keep you confined. And yet there's a strange comfort in it. The fear feels familiar, predictable. It gives structure to chaos. Without it, who would you be? He started to see that abundance requires a kind of courage most people never practice. The courage to stop preparing for disaster long enough to enjoy the moment that isn't one. It's easy to survive in fear. It's harder to live in peace because peace demands trust, and trust is the first thing scarcity takes from you. He began to understand that maybe the point wasn't to escape fear, but to stop obeying it, to recognize it when it speaks and choose not to listen. He thought again of his childhood kitchen, of his parents' tired eyes. They didn't mean to pass on their fear. They thought they were keeping him safe, and in a way they were. Fear got them through hard times, but fear was never meant to be a home. Maybe this generation's task isn't to earn more, but to unlearn more. To stop worshipping the ghost that once kept us alive and start building lives it no longer controls. He looked around the office that day, colleagues tapping keyboards, eyes glued to screens, and realized the whole world was haunted. Haunted by not enough. Haunted by safety that never arrives. And in that realization, something small and quiet shifted inside him. For the first time, he wasn't angry at the fear. He just saw it for what it was, a relic of survival living in a world that no longer required it. The change didn't come like an explosion. It came like a whisper, so small he almost ignored it. One morning, he sat at his desk, surrounded by all the symbols of safety. He had spent a lifetime building savings accounts, contracts, plans stacked neatly in folders. Everything was in order, and yet he felt exhausted not from work, but from defending. He realized he had been defending himself from a threat that no longer existed. The childhood storms had passed, but his body was still bracing for impact. That morning, instead of opening his laptop, he closed his eyes. He took a breath. For once. He didn't plan it, didn't optimize it, didn't measure it. He just let it happen. And for the first time in years, he noticed how hard it was to simply be still. He felt the restlessness rise the mind whispering, "You're wasting time. You should be doing something." But beneath that thought, there was another voice, quieter, older, softer, saying, "You've done enough." That voice startled him, because it didn't sound like ambition, it sounded like forgiveness. He didn't know how to respond, so he just sat there breathing through the discomfort of peace. It felt unfamiliar, almost unsafe. His body didn't trust it yet. But something deep inside began to shift a small crack in the code. Awareness, he realized, is not a grand awakening. It's the slow noticing of everything you used to overlook. It's realizing how automatic your fears have become. How many of your choices are really reflexes? How many of your values are just inherited alarms? He started paying attention not to his finances, but to his reactions. The rush of panic when the stock market dipped, the guilt when he bought something purely for joy, the tension when a colleague earned praise. Each reaction was a line of old code resurfacing, and instead of fighting it, he started observing it almost with curiosity, like watching a storm from behind glass. He began asking new questions. What if this feeling isn't about money? What if this fear is just memory? What if I don't need to solve it, only to stop obeying it? That was the beginning of reprogramming. He learned that the scarcity mind doesn't disappear through logic. You can't reason with fear. You can only build a new kind of safety that doesn't depend on circumstances. So he started small. He bought himself coffee without guilt. He took a walk in the middle of the day, even when the to-do list wasn't finished. He stopped checking his bank account for reassurance. He let the unease come and didn't run from it. At first, it felt wrong, irresponsible, like he was betraying some invisible rule that had kept him alive. But over time, the world didn't collapse. The bills were still paid. Life went on. Only now, there were moments of stillness between the noise. That's when he realized freedom doesn't begin when you have enough money. It begins the moment you stop letting fear decide what enough means. He thought back to his parents. They had done their best, built their version of safety in a world that offered them little. He carried gratitude for that now, not resentment, because the fear they passed down wasn't failure, it was love, expressed in the only language they knew. But he also saw that love, when fused with fear, becomes a closed loop. It protects you from the past, but keeps you from the present. To honor what they gave him, he had to break that loop, to live the peace they never had the chance to feel. So he began a quiet rebellion, not against society, not against money, but against his own conditioning. He practiced trust. He practiced letting go. He practiced generosity, not to prove abundance, but to feel it. When a friend needed help, he gave without calculating. When an opportunity came, he accepted without fear of failure. When a day passed uneventfully, he let it without calling it wasted. Each small act rewrote the code, not in the mind, but in the body. Slowly, his nervous system began to believe what his intellect had always known. He was safe. He discovered that abundance isn't something you reach, it's something you allow. It's not found in more, it's found in enough. Enough rest, enough air, enough kindness toward yourself to stop living as if the world is ending tomorrow. And once he stopped running, he noticed something strange. Life didn't shrink. It expanded, colors felt deeper, conversations felt fuller. Time, which used to vanish in urgency, began to stretch. He was no longer chasing minutes, he was living them. He realized that the opposite of scarcity isn't wealth, it's presence. Because when you're fully here, not in yesterday's fear or tomorrow's worry, you finally understand that enough isn't a number, it's a state of being. Some days, the old program still tries to run. The fear still whispers, what if it all disappears? But now he smiles, because he knows the truth. Even if it did, he would still be here breathing, adapting, beginning again. And that's the one thing scarcity can't take away, the ability to start over, without panic, without shame, without fear. For the first time in his life, he doesn't want more. He just wants peace. And maybe, he thinks, that's what real wealth feels like. Not the absence of need, but the absence of fear. It begins where it once began, in the quiet kitchen at midnight. The same marble counter, the same fridge humming softly, the same man standing there, but not the same eyes. He opens the refrigerator again. Rows of food, neat and plentiful. But tonight he doesn't feel the old hunger, not the one that food could never fix. He just stands there breathing, feeling the cool air on his face, the stillness around him. It's so ordinary, and for the first time that feels like enough. The ghost is still here, that old whisper of not enough, but now he hears it for what it is, a memory, not a prophecy. It no longer commands him, it only visits, and when it does he smiles, because ghosts lose their power when you stop running from them. He pours a glass of water, sits at the table where he once calculated, worried, planned. The numbers haven't changed much, but he has. He used to think the point of life was to escape fear. Now he knows the point is to make peace with it, to live alongside it without letting it steer. He remembers how much time he spent trying to feel secure, how much of his life was spent earning safety that can never be earned, because real safety, he's learned, isn't in what you have, it's in what you trust. And trust doesn't live in numbers, it lives in awareness. He looks around the house, the things he once bought, to prove he was safe. They're still beautiful, but they've changed meaning. They're not trophies anymore. They're tools, objects, not evidence. He doesn't cling to them, he uses them, appreciates them, and lets them rest the way one holds open hands, not closed fists. He thinks about how different the world looks when you stop seeing it through the lens of fear. The rush of competition softens, the noise of comparison fades. There's room again for rest, for gratitude, for enough. He wonders how many people are still living in the old story, believing peace is something you have to afford, believing joy is something you have to earn. He wishes he could tell them, you don't have to be rich to feel safe. You just have to stop treating fear as truth. The system may run on fear, but your soul doesn't have to. You can step out any time. The world won't stop spinning. You'll just start noticing that it's been moving all along. He remembers his parents again, the long nights, the bills, the tension. He feels no anger now, only understanding. They gave him everything they could, discipline, resilience, caution. But those gifts, once essential, had become armor too heavy to carry into peace. He sets them down gently with gratitude. Because healing isn't rebellion, it's evolution. It's finishing the story your parents didn't get to complete. And maybe that's what progress really means, not earning more than the generation before you, but fearing less. He's learned that abundance has little to do with money. Abundance is the capacity to feel safe inside uncertainty. It's the quiet knowing that you will meet tomorrow as you always have, resourceful, adaptable, alive. He no longer measures wealth in digits. He measures it in moments, a full breath, a meal shared without guilt, a morning without hurry, a night without defense. These are the currencies of a rich life, invisible to the world but undeniable to the heart. He's not perfect. Some days the fear still flickers a shadow at the edge of peace. But now he lets it pass. He doesn't tighten his grip. He doesn't check his accounts. He just whispers back, I'm safe now. And he means it. He finishes his water, leans back, and for the first time in a long time, feels the weight lift. Not because the world has changed, but because he finally stopped trying to control it. He thinks about how strange it is that the same fear which once drove him to chase more has now become the teacher that taught him how to stop. Fear was never the enemy. It was just the messenger carrying one truth he had refused to hear. You are already enough. But maybe that's the final paradox, that the path to abundance isn't through accumulation, but through surrender. He stands, turns off the light, and walks past the silent fridge, Not hungry, not restless, just full. Not because he has everything, but because he finally trusts that he doesn't need to. Before he goes to bed, he looks around one last time, not to check, not to count, but to appreciate. He feels a quiet gratitude for the man who once couldn't rest, for the boy who once feared the lights would go out, for the parents who taught him to survive, and for the self who finally learned how to live. He smiles because he understands now what the ghost never did. Wealth was never about money. It was about safety, and safety was never about control. It was about trust. He turns off the last light. The room falls into darkness. But inside, something stays illuminated, soft, steady, unshaken. Maybe that's what peace is. Not the end of fear, but the quiet knowing that you can hold it without losing yourself. He takes one last breath and whispers, as if closing the story that once owned him. Maybe wealth was never about money at all.